So I'm making this recording in regards to a murder case that I had come across recently. It's a very interesting case. It involved three people. One is a mother. One was the mother's friend. And the third person was a friend of the friend, I guess. This one involves a small child that was 4 years old that was murdered. He was shot and killed, and this happened back in 1989. So the people involved are James Stiers, Deborah Mielke, and Roger Scott. Deborah Mielke is the mother. The child's name was Christopher Mielke, and they lived right here where I live in Phoenix, Arizona. So I had never heard of this case. In '89, I was 10 years old, so wasn't paying much attention to the news back then. But you know, as I've gotten older, these kinds of things kind of interest me to look into. So I've kind of taken some notes and just wanted to talk about it, really. You know, I'm no expert at this kind of stuff. I just want to talk about it and get my thoughts out there, I suppose. So James Stiers was actually found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, child abuse, and kidnapping. He was sentenced to death row originally, but then, you know, I was reading online, and it looks like he was gonna get it reduced to life and get off of death row. Although I was unable to completely verify that with my online research. If anybody knows how to find that out, comment, let me know. I could not figure out if he was successful in getting that reduced. But one part of his motivation apparently was that he liked Deborah Mielke. I read that somewhere, but also one of the theories against Deborah Mielke was that she was putting in an insurance claim against her son, the 4-year-old, for $5,000. I don't know how money works back then versus now, but 5,000 doesn't sound like a whole lot when you're talking about your 4-year-old kid. Anyhow, he was under the impression apparently that he was going to get a portion of that, half of that. I'm not exactly sure. I couldn't verify that either, but it said that he thought that he was going to get some of that money from Deborah Mielke. Deborah Mielke is an interesting case as well. She spent over 25 years in prison, but eventually got out. She has a wealthy family, I suppose. I gathered back in Europe. I think she's from Germany, or around there. And, you know, she was able to hire some powerful lawyers while she was in prison, I suppose. I think her family did. And eventually, after 25 years, they got her out and got her off. Her conviction was overturned on March 14th in 2013. You know, under the pretense that she didn't have a fair trial. It looks like the investigator Armando Saldate, he was apparently a shady character, and you know, he didn't record her confession. He claims she confessed, but he didn't record it. There was no witnesses. There was nobody watching behind the mirror. There was nobody. It was just him. And he claimed to have thrown his notes away after writing his report, immediately after writing his report. Anyhow, Roger Scott's the other person. He's on death row, and he's filing appeals, from what I saw, based on mental issues. Although he has been unsuccessful thus far, it looks like that's what he's trying to go off of, to try to see if he can get his sentence reduced. But otherwise, from what I've been able to read online, he remains on death row. He claims that James Stiers and Deborah Mielke offered him $250 to help. $250 to kill a child. Pretty crazy, huh? But he was the one that was questioned and eventually spilled all the beans on this case. He led the investigators to the body, which happened to be on 99th Avenue and Happy Valley Road, around Joe Max as well. He also gave up the gun and he also had shoes that Stiers was wearing, James Stiers was wearing, at the time of the murder, with blood on it and everything. So I'll just read a little bit of the notes that I, was able to gather. So James and his 2-year-old daughter, he had a 2-year-old daughter, had lived with Deborah, apparently, and her 4-year-old son, Christopher Mielke. Mielke worked at an insurance agency, and Stiers was unemployed, and he watched Christopher for Deborah while she was at work. So apparently this took place in December of 1989. Mielke dressed her son in his favorite outfit. She told him that he was going to go see Santa, and Stiers and Roger Scott took Christopher supposedly to Metro Center Mall. That's what they had told the child was going to happen. On the way, they stopped a couple of times to get some medication for Roger Scott's mother. And then from there, they stopped at Peter Pepper Pizza and had lunch with the boy. They had lunch with Christopher. I guess maybe to give him, I don't know what they were thinking, make him feel happy one last time. So after that, they drove out to 99th Avenue and Happy Valley Road, and they told Christopher they were going to go see some snakes. So, as a 4-year-old, probably excited, like, oh yeah, let's go. Instead of searching for snakes, though, they walked out from the car. Scott dropped off Stiers. They walked out, and the little boy was shot in the back of the head 3 times with a .22 caliber pistol. It's even hard for me to read my notes on that. That's pretty sad to shoot a 4-year-old. Crazy. Stiers and Scott left his body. They left Christopher's body lying in the fetal position in the wash that was there, and he still had his bubble gum in his mouth that he was chewing when they found his body. He was still actively chewing. Bubble gum was still there. Pretty sad to even think about that. But then after that, Scott and Stiers drove to Metro Center, and they had what they thought was an elaborate plan to cover this all up. They separated from each other. Stiers asked Scott to make sure the shoes that he was wearing had disappeared. And it's Scott's contention that he dropped Stiers off and drove away, heard 3 shots, and then came back and picked up Stiers. So that was his way of trying to say that he wasn't really that involved. Anyhow, this was all around 2:30 p.m. when they went to the Metro Center after, what they did to the poor little boy. I believe it was around 11. I think they left around 11 from Deborah Mielke's apartment when they first took the boy. 11:30. Anyhow, by 2:30 they were at Metro Center Mall, and Stiers approached a Sears employee. So they parked by the Sears that used to be there. He approached the Sears employee, telling this person that Christopher went missing from the bathroom. So this was their way of trying to put the blame on someone else, trying to say that Christopher was kidnapped by someone else or just disappeared. Stiers says he was in the stall when Christopher disappeared. The Sears employee and Stiers immediately started a search. You know what I mean? Obviously, a Sears employee, not knowing any better, is going to become alarmed and try to figure out what they can do to help find this poor child. As they're walking along, Stiers is, Scott is also in the mall walking around. And so the employee and Stiers eventually run into Scott, and the 2 men, they act surprised to see each other, like, oh my goodness, what are you doing here? So they pretend to be surprised to see each other, and then after a couple of hours of searching, the police were finally called in around 4 p.m. So they were really trying to cement in the story and trying to make it look like, Christopher disappeared from Sears in the Metro Center. Metro Center Mall, which is an older mall that's now actually just closed for good. here in 2020, but it used to be one of the more popular malls in the area. Let's see. So Stiers told police he had brought Christopher to see Santa Claus, and he maintained he disappeared while in the bathroom. One thing the investigator noticed, though, while retracing steps, was that the stall that Stiers claimed Christopher was using, it had no toilet seat, so that immediately raised a red flag for the investigator. Stiers had made several calls to Deborah Milkey while the police searched the mall for Christopher. They searched until about 3 a.m. Obviously, they weren't going to find him, right? But they searched until like 3 a.m. when the police decided to, they finally decided to take Stiers back for additional questioning around 3 a.m. So, you know, they didn't really get anywhere with Stiers. So afterwards, they took him back. They took him home, basically. They didn't really get anywhere with him at that point. So they took him home, where he remained, actually, until he was arrested. So what ended up happening is they questioned Scott. He led police to Christopher's body in the wash. Police that's when they saw that the poor little boy was shot 3 times in the back of the head. They did find 22 caliber bullet shell casings nearby the scene, so that's evidence. They also located the black Nike sneakers that Stiers was wearing during the murder. So I read somewhere that Scott had actually just dropped them outside of the Sears, I think in some bushes, and so they were recovered. So let's get into a little bit of Deborah Milkey, because she's a very interesting character in this whole thing. And it appears that the sentiment on her is 50-50, 50%, or, you know, one side thinks that she is definitely part of this and guilty, and then there's another side, you know, after she was released and everything else that happened, believe that she was innocent. So anyhow, she spent more than 2 decades on death row for killing, you know, 4-year-old Christopher. But there was a court decision that ultimately freed her with the help of discovering that the original police investigator had been dirty. So Deborah Milkey was convicted for arranging the murder by having Stiles and Scott kill Christopher so that she could collect a $5,000 life insurance policy on the child. So supposedly Milkey was in love with a co-worker at the insurance agency, so she wasn't even really involved with Stiers, but apparently from what I read somewhere, Stiers was, you know, he was super into Milkey. Anyhow, the story goes that the co-worker at the insurance agency did not want to be an instant father, and, you know, Milkey had her Christopher at the time. So this is some motivation for her getting rid of Christopher. She first attempted to find family members or friends to take young Christopher, but no one was cooperating with that. They were probably basically like, why are we going to take your son? You step up and you be a mom and you watch him. And then, of course, she asked the biological father, but apparently they were having some problems back in. So from what I read, there was an active restraining order at that time that she was asking. So that probably had to do with a lot of why the father wasn't able to or couldn't take on Christopher at the time. I couldn't find any details on what issues that they had between each other, other than there was an active restraining order. But, you know, the fact that there was a restraining order probably had a lot to do with why, you know, Christopher didn't end up with the dad. Armando Saldate, he claimed that Milkey confessed to him, but there's no witnesses, no confession was recorded. There was no recording. His personal record was not turned over. That showed misconduct in other cases during the trial for Deborah Milkey. That was never presented in the court. So the jury or nobody saw that Armando Saldate was not, you know, an honest investigator as presented. He had some issues. And Milkey's lawyers contended that Noel Levy, the prosecutor at the time, displayed egregious behavior during the trial. Milkey claims Saldate ignored her request for a lawyer, did not read her the Miranda rights, and there was no physical evidence linking her to the crime. So now I'm reading notes in regards to how she was trying to get off later on. Neither Scott nor Stiers would actually testify against her, but Scott adamantly kept to the story that she was the brainchild of this entire thing. He never let that go. But James Stiers does contend that she was not involved. He says that, from what I read. So in March of 2013, Mielke's conviction and death sentences were thrown out by the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. One reason was the original prosecutor failed to disclose evidence that might have helped Mielke's lawyers challenge the testimony of Saldate. The courts released her and stated they were clear that Mielke's constitutional rights were violated. So basically the contention is he didn't read her the Miranda rights and also did not, she asked for a lawyer during the questioning and things like that, and this is her contention, and nobody would grant her that. So sorry about my little coughing there, but I went ahead and grabbed me a drink. Nice little 805 here to, soothe my throat and keep me from coughing more. Sorry about that. So the courts released her and stated they were clear that Mielke's constitutional rights were violated. And Deborah, quote, said, "I just wanted to start off by saying I had absolutely nothing to do with the brutal murder of my son," unquote. So I'll discuss Armando Saldate just a little bit. Apparently Saldate's supervisor had asked him to record the conversation, but Saldate didn't. He just ignored it. He just went in. He didn't even take a recorder with him into the interrogation. Saldate's claim is that Mielke refused to have the interrogation recorded, but then he later admitted that he basically didn't want to record it anyways. Saldate apparently had the thoughts that tape recorders are obstacles in obtaining the truth, and so it's his practice to not ever use a tape recorder. This was his contention, and this was back, in 1989. So who knows what other investigators thought at the time, or if this was something that was common amongst other, investigative practices. Who knows? In my brain, it seems like it'd be common sense if you don't have witnesses or whatever, several witnesses, to have a tape recorder so that, your story is proven true. His assertion to the court and the lawyers was that everyone just shouldn't worry. Don't worry at all. He would note the conversation down in a truthful manner, so there is really no need for a tape recorder. So, hey, he's a trustful Phoenix investigator, and no need to question him at all. He's gonna do everything the best way possible and truthful. That's what his contention was. So according to Mielke, Saldate ignored her request for a lawyer, I guess apparently during the questioning. Didn't I mention this already? He did. I mean, she did ask for a lawyer, and he just ignored it. So some of his personal history shows questionable behavior. He had a 5-day suspension for taking liberties with a female motorist and then lied about it to his superiors. He was also involved in 8 other cases that were dismissed or overturned because he was lying under oath, or he was violating the civil rights of detainees, which I mentioned earlier too. One of those violations was not reading the Miranda rights. So this dude clearly had some questionable law enforcement history, behavioral history. He has been asked to answer questions under oath in regards to his misconduct, but he's fighting it. And I was having a hard time finding very recent articles or very recent information on this. But as of 2016, he had requested to not have to answer questions in regards to any wrongful conviction for this case, for Deborah Mielke. And his request was denied by a judge in 2016. But other than that, I wasn't able to find any other information as far as if it's gone any further than that, or was he able to get himself protected and get himself off the hook. But clearly it looks like this guy had some he played a part. He played a part in how Deborah Mielke got convicted and spent over 2 decades. And this is where it comes to people falling on different sides of the fence. There's people that are like, it doesn't matter anything that he did because she was the brainchild of the entire thing. She wanted the $5,000 and she wanted to get rid of her son so that she could be with the co-worker at the insurance agency. And, you know, the unemployed James Stiers and his buddy Scott just seemed like easy people that she could manipulate to get it done and get things done the way she wanted. And she thought she was going to be hands off, and if they did it correctly, everyone would be off and free. But she probably also thought that if they got caught, they would be the ones to suffer, and she would probably be, left as innocent, not have to suffer any of the consequences. And then there's people that fall on the other side of that fence that are like, she was innocent the entire time. She lost a 4-year-old child to the actions of these 2 guys, and Armando Saldate and his shady practices are what got her put into prison to begin with, into a place where she did not belong. So their contention is she spent over 2 decades unnecessarily, unfairly, and that Armando Saldate should be the one in prison, or should be the one suffering some consequences. And as far as what I could see, other than some questioning and things of that nature, I did not find anything that showed that he has been charged with any kind of perjury or charged with any kind of crime in regards to this or anything else. He's retired now, from what I saw, and I mean, I hate to say it, but if he did do something bad, which it looks like he did, he's gotten away with it. He's off. He's off in retirement land, probably over there in Mesa, Arizona, where there's tons of retirement houses, or in Sun City. But anyhow, I just wanted to give a little story on that, just talk about it. Like I said, I'm no expert on this, but I just like to make these videos and just talk about some of these things. I do know that I do know from what I read online that Roger Scott, he is claiming mental issues, and he's trying to work on appeals on that. I only read one article, and so I can't verify this as well, but James Stiers was trying to get his reduced from death row to life in prison. And so one article that I read was actually, the person that was least culpable for this whole thing, according to this article's contention, is Roger Scott. And Roger Scott is the one is the only one that's probably going to die. Deborah Mielke's released. James Stiers is going to do life in prison. So anyhow, a lot of the stuff is different articles that I was reading. It's hard to, as far as what's happening right this second, it's hard to find that information, at least for someone as limited as me. So I'm not sure if Roger Scott has done any more appeals, and if he successfully has reduced his sentence from death to life as well. So do your own research, look into it, but very sad case of this poor 4-year-old boy. He never even had a chance. He was 4 years old in '89, which means he was born in '85. That's 6 years, I can't count. That's 6 years after I was born. So he'd be about 35 right now. It's just sad. It's sad that he would still be in the prime of his life, young, and it was taken away from him by some craziness. But anyhow, if any of you want to leave comments or any kind of discussion, feel free. And I will be doing videos like this here periodically. So if you want to subscribe and follow me, that'd be great too. All right, I will end this video now and talk to you guys another time.